Well, hello everyone. I had promised you some more information about the Alberta pension plan and how it stacks up in comparison to a Canada pension plan. And one of the things I have been sharing in our meetings is the three greatest risk factors to a Canada pension plan from an overall perspective, according to the chief actuarial report written in 2021 was the last one. It's the 31st report. There are three things, obviously, that are taken into account. The first one is demographics, and the second one is the economy, and the third one is immigration. Now, I happened to come across an article today that I thought particularly fascinating and extremely relevant to the conversation around the Canada pension plan versus an Alberta pension plan. And this is written by Andrew Coyne. It is from the Globe and Mail. And the title is Canada is no longer one of the richest nations on earth. Country after country is passing us by. Now, what Andrew is talking about in here is actually Canada's GDP, gross domestic product. And he points out, rightly so, that in the fourth quarter of 2023, it was the worst sustained drop that we have experienced in more than 30 years. Now, we're going to get into how that's relevant and what that actually means in a moment, but he is referring to a growth crisis, is how he's termed it. I will call it a productivity crisis, and I'm going to blame really crappy government policy on most of this. And it is things that are well within our control to fix. We just don't have any government in Canada, with the exception of maybe here in Alberta, that's willing to address the actual issues. So here we go, because this is relevant to whether or not we stay with the Canada pension plan or we go out on our own and we do our own Alberta pension plan. And the strength of the economy is huge in determining that decision, because a strong Alberta economy will fare far better having its own pension plan than being tied to basically a lagging economy, which is what we're seeing in Canada. And if you consider the economy, you consider the demographics, and you consider immigration, those three things, as highlighted by the chief actuarial report, as being the three biggest risks, well, Alberta basically outperforms on all three fronts. But tonight we're going to specifically talk about this Andrew Coyne article and how he refers to the growth crisis and the fact that the economy is now growing slower than the population. We addressed that in a previous video called Population Trap. So if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. But what it means is that all the savings, all the money that's coming in is basically being spent to sustain what we currently have, leaving no growth for investment to be able to improve people's currently their standard of living. So realistically, what we're saying to our youth and the people who are working so hard today is that you might as well give up hope, because there is no way that you can improve your lot in life. What you got is what you got. All this to say that we rank at the bottom. So the OECD, which is the Organization for Cooperation and Economic Development, has been following the economies of about 47 different countries for a number of years, of which Canada is a member. And not only did it state that for the next decade, we are going to be at the bottom as far as productivity goes, we are going to be there basically for the next 3 decades after that. So all the way through to about 2060, Canada is expected to be one of the worst performing, slowest growth as far as GDP goes amongst the OECD countries. Now, I've talked about this in our meetings, but for those of you who have not yet attended one, we will go into a great significant amount of detail about that and answer any questions that you have. So if you're following along with me, I do want to talk about Alberta a little bit, because Alberta, obviously being Canada's richest province, and if any of you have been following along, Trevor Tome actually has produced some reports on the Alberta pension plan and where Alberta would rank amongst a number of different states, for example. And one of the things that he has stated, and this is highlighted in Andrew's article here as well, is that Alberta would rank 14th amongst all the United States right now. And the US is performing far better as far as the OECD rankings and GDP, but Alberta would rank 14th. That is significant. And yet there are 5 provinces in Canada that are 5 poorest provinces now rank amongst the 6th poorest jurisdictions in North America. I'm going to restate that because we need to let that sink in, because the poorest 5 provinces now rank amongst the 6th poorest jurisdictions in all of North America. Ontario ranks just ahead of Alabama, and British Columbia is poorer than Kentucky. Okay, this cannot be overstated, because if we are going to look at an Alberta pension plan objectively, then we have to be able to assess our economy and compare it to that to Canada's economy. And Alberta's economy, of course, we are coming into a boom as far as oil and gas goes. Will that be sustained forever? No. But the reality is the demand for oil and gas is going to increase and continue to increase for decades. And there are other things that we are doing to diversify the economy. Alberta's economy is extremely strong. And then combine that with our very educated and very motivated, probably our most conservative and business-friendly work environment, Alberta is set to outperform Canada substantially. It is the economic engine right now of Canada, and unfortunately we have a very hostile federal government that is doing everything within its power to basically destroy the economy, not only of Alberta, but all of Canada. And it's done a very good job of that over the last number of decades, but in particular since Trudeau. So Canadians actually work more hours on average than most people in other countries, as it states here, and measured in output per hour worked, which is what we call labor productivity. We ranked 18th, which is posting some of the lowest rate of productivity growth, again, in the OECD since 1981. And Alberta, again, bucks this trend. So if we're going to compare an Alberta pension plan to a Canada pension plan, Alberta just far supersedes the capacity right now to do much better economically. And then we go on here, he talks a little bit about the demographics and age distribution. Now, we already know that Alberta has the youngest, highest income, and the most productive as far as number of hours worked and number of people working than anyone else in Canada. Now, that is not the case, again, in Canada as a general rule. So one of the things I was talking tonight with a friend was everybody in Alberta, if we could say, you know what, we're going to stop equalization payments tomorrow, they would all be on board with that pretty much. Yet here we are with the Canada Pension Plan, and that's exactly what this is. Let's stop the equalization payment, because that's exactly what we are doing. Alberta has been disproportionately contributing to the Canada Pension Plan, in which those 5 poorest provinces that Andrew just mentioned in his article, who basically are down at the 6th poorest, it ranked 5 out of the 6 poorest sorry, I'll go back and read it properly, ranks among the 6th poorest jurisdictions in North America. Well, Alberta has been supporting them and propping them up for decades. And, you know, when is enough is enough? We've been complaining about equalization payments and how unfair that is. Well, here we have in the Canada Pension Plan, yet again, another quasi equalization payment that is being sent to Canada at Albertans' expense. So the baby boomers now are going to start retiring. Everybody is living longer. You have to remember that when Canada started the pension plan, people on average lived to the age of 72, 73. So they were planning for 7, 8 years. Now people are living to the age of 83 on average, and that's expected to continue to grow for a little bit. So sadly, you know, there's a big difference between trying to fund somebody's retirement for 7 years and then trying to fund somebody's retirement for 18 years. The number and the amount of investment that it requires to do that is substantially different. And of course, we are seeing that reflected now as the federal government has consistently been increasing the premiums and to fund a pension plan, the Canada pension plan, basically because we have people that are living longer, we have more people that are going to be drawing than the numbers of people who are actually working. And this is becoming the scary part on the demographic side. Because in realistic terms, if you take a look at one time, we used to have 7, 8 people working for every one person who was retired. Here by 2030, I think the number is going to be about 2.5 people working for every one person retired. And that is going to continue to worsen for a little bit before it gets better. So, we just don't have the productivity, the number of people coming in with contributions to sustain the people who are actually going to be drawing out of the Canada Pension Plan. Again, Alberta is in the complete opposite scenario to that. They have a young workforce where they have more people contributing than they actually have drawing, and that will not change for the next 3 decades in this province if it changes at all, and that's a big if. So realistically, the only way to make any significant change to this would be to increase productivity. Productivity would, I think, resolve a lot of the problems that we are seeing in Canada today. The problem is we do not have a federal government that is pro growth and pro getting out of the way of businesses, and has actually been hostile to business, hostile to growth, hostile directly to the economy. We have had countries come knock on our door and ask us to sell them more oil and gas. Good partners, people like Japan, people like Germany, and we have basically said no, which makes absolutely no sense, especially considering the mess that we are in. We have more people as far as immigration than we have the ability to sustain infrastructure, whether it be healthcare, whether it be education. It makes no sense. So Alberta, of course, is moving forward with investment. It's moving forward with growth. And of course, the federal government, especially under this Justin Trudeau Liberal government, is basically just talking fruitless debates about the macroeconomics and, of course, using stimulus, fiscal policy, monetary policy. They like to boast the fact that daycare, like, lovely. Oh, daycare is going to be the solution to all of this so more people can get out into the workforce. That's an absolute farce. The plan has always been to make Canada a second-class country. So Canada's been falling behind in productivity for many years, and there is no reason for that except for bad government policy, which could easily be corrected, but it is not going to be corrected under the current government.